Hey, I'm always happy when we go live with no complications. So my anxiety level's down, my dial's down to a number one because no one's immune from anxiety or TMS, just how we implement and apply the rules. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein. It's Monday night, and I am here in TMS Roundtable. We're streaming live on the same side of the world in Israel. It's 9 o'clock, and my guest tonight is Lorna Nicholson. I want to put your name up for a minute, Lorna, while I introduce you. And Lorna is in the UK, and I am, and not helping. Oh my God, that was such a, I'll have to change that, and not helping others. Wait a minute, I want to change that right now. And now helping. Aha. And now helping others. Wait a second. Not helping others. And now helping others. Update. Okay. Lorna, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm so excited. Your story is inspiring. It's educating. I like to say that, we don't have to be Dalai Lamas on the mountain to heal, but we do have to do the work, and it's not easy. And it's possible. What do they say? It's like, it's not even about a cure. It's about the process. And your process is really, really amazing. And I'm excited to hear every detail.
Okay.
So please share. I might interrupt, which I occasionally do. And then if there's a pertinent question at the time, I might interrupt. But I'm happy to have people join the studio, join us on the Facebook and ask questions. And I do want to say a few things. Lorna, you are SERPA trained, which we love Georgie and all the work that she's doing in the UK. She's an amazing therapist and has an amazing organization. You were a nurse, which is just like close to my heart. Rose is a nurse also and a therapist. And you healed from an unbelievable autoimmune. Usually Rose does a little intro, and then now I'm doing her part. So I'll just be quiet and give you the mic.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead. Share from hello, from soup to nuts. I want to hear all the details.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'll just start off with my background and what I do now, which you just started to touch on. Yeah. So my background is nursing. I used to work in the emergency department, so ER in the US, accident and emergency in the UK. I then moved from there into primary care, so GP, so working with people with more chronic, ongoing, unexplained health conditions. So I did that for many years. So I worked as an advanced nurse practitioner, pretty much doing the same job as my doctor colleagues. I've now stepped out of the traditional health service. I teach Pilates. I have an interest in breathing and breathing re-education and the interlink between breathing, health, and the nervous system.
Wow.
And I will also do the SERPA work, so work with people with unexplained chronic health conditions that often in my primary care work, these clients, you just didn't have an answer.
You had to say, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like Dr. Clark's book is They Can't Find Anything Wrong. And can you imagine that feeling that your doctor couldn't even, like it was a medically unexplained symptom? I mean, I can imagine the stress that you felt in your unconscious watching these people, watching, like, this is another topic about the doctors, but you were involved with all these doctors, working with them, probably knowing much more than they do. I mean, the assistant or the nurses, really, they don't get enough credit. But so get ahead. You witnessed all that, and now you're helping people.
It was becoming increasingly difficult to know what I know in that setting. So I got to the point where I felt I needed to take myself out of it so I can work more independently, which is now what I do. So I mainly work with people with POTS, Postural Tachycardia Syndrome, which we'll talk more about, long COVID, which is quite current, as well as people with chronic pain. And with the POTS, there's often an overlap with hypermobility, something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which I'm happy to talk more about as
Yes.
well. So a lot of my clients kind of fit into that sort of category, and chronic fatigue syndrome as well comes into that. And I
So
also,
Lorna, when you were working for these doctors, that's kind of when you yourself started getting the symptoms because you were under. I'm just thinking maybe that was a lot of the stress because you couldn't help people. You were watching people, and you felt this. Was that part of what was
yeah,
going on?
to be honest, I think I started going on this journey of understanding when the health symptoms started with me, and I was working. This was in 2006, 2007 that symptoms started. So it was a long time ago, and I was working in accident and emergency. And when I think of, I look back now and think of what was going on in my life in terms of I was living by myself, I was single, I was having to function independently without any particularly close social support. A&E, people would say to me, said, oh, that must be a stressful job. But I was like, well, actually, no, it's not stressful. But I look back and think, oh my goodness, how stressful was that?
So you were kind of like you had this pat answer to people, and you were maybe ignoring that it really was stressful. That was
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And I think sometimes when you're in a situation, it's just your normal. That's what you do.
yeah,
It's only when you come out of it and look at it,
good,
then you see what it was really like.
good point.
And shift work as well. I don't think my body suited shift work. So that's
What
a bit
is shift
stressful.
work? You mean working like nights and different hours and
Yeah, yeah. So
yeah.
working, the start times of work didn't fit with my natural body sync. So that was putting more stress on my body than, again, I look back and think, yeah, that was stressful.
Wow. But you made a beautiful list. Put your story on this Facebook page. You made a list of exactly what was going on at the time.
Mm, mm,
That doesn't mean people will say to us, you as a coach, well, nothing was going on at the time. And it's
mm,
okay, but their body perceived some kind of threat. So but you listed all these things going on. You were working very hard. Your father had passed from
mm.
cancer. You listed a couple things. So go ahead. So you got sick in 2007,
Yeah,
and what was going on at the time?
yeah, yeah. So in a way, it was, yeah, my dad had died the year before, so I'd kind of gone through that. But I was physically pushing myself. I was training for, I wanted to develop in the ski instructor world. So I was pushing myself physically in between doing all the shift work. I then had an amazing opportunity to spend sort of part of a ski season in the Alps. So I was 2 weeks in the UK, 2 weeks in the Alps, coming back to the UK, working in A&E in between. So all of that was going on, and I had a virus, just a normal cold. It wasn't anything to be concerned about, but it just kind of lingered. So I went on another one of these trips with this cold. Again, my time ski instructing, it was great fun. It was a fun time of my life,
Right,
as
you were
well.
happy. Like you were
I was happy.
happy.
Yeah, yeah. But the stress, it's a different sort of stress. But I look back and think, wow, I was stressing my body. I was really stressing my body with
But
what I was trying to do.
but do you think you were look, they always say that the thoughts trump everything. So, but you were happy. But do you think that maybe you were ignoring something deep
Mm.
inside?
Yeah, good question. I think I don't think I was aware of it at the time, but all of this busyness, it just hid lots of stuff underneath. And yeah, it's only many years later, as I've started learning this work, that I've started doing or becoming more aware of some of the deeper layers.
Do you
But
think you think one of your core feelings that you might have felt was fear that, I mean, I'm thinking fear, anger, like what was triggering you? Like what deep core feeling? Was it anger? Was it fear? Was it um, guilt? Was it some kind of like, what do you think might have been going on? Like what do you think the message was that your body attacked itself, your heart?
mm, yeah,
Did you,
I honestly don't think I could pinpoint that, other than the pace I was doing life was too much. And it felt like that there need to be an adjustment of balance.
And your body slowed you down.
Yeah,
How amazing is that?
yeah.
So how do you feel? Like, well, tell us. So go ahead. I won't interrupt anymore. Like, you get these symptoms, and you're
Yeah.
like, so what else is? Tell us what's going on now. You get the symptoms, and
So at the time, what happened was I went on another trip back to the Alps, had a fall, so a really minor fall, sprained my thumb slightly, and it was like something shifted in that moment. It was like that was the tipping point, the thing too many. So any one of these things in isolation, having a virus, having a fall, traveling abroad, I don't think would have been a problem, but it was a cumulative stuff was just like, my body was like, stop. And most certainly to begin with, I was totally unaware of what was going on. And it kind of showed itself in a sort of depression, lack of energy. My motivation for doing things kind of dialed down. Gradually exercise intolerance. So I'd try and do something active, and just be really fatigued by it, unusually fatigued, when normally I have quite a high exercise tolerance. And this was over the period of a number of months. That my exercise tolerance, what I understand now is I was disconnected from my body. I was unaware of what was going on in my body. The symptoms, I wasn't even aware. I couldn't even put into words what was going on. But my body was knocking, and I wasn't listening. I was in denial. I was in my head. And actually, if I knew what I know now, I'd kind of come into my body and say, oh, okay, what's going on here? Here's a symptom, sensation. What does this mean? What's the message? What's my body trying to tell me? But I didn't understand that at the time. So my drivenness, typical personality trait, pushed through. I was like, keep going. And I continued for a number of months, just pushing through.
Under fatigue with a little bit of slow, like first, second gear, you kept pushing.
Yeah, totally. And eventually it was like I ended up going to see the doctor. And even then I think I became aware that my heart rate was not quite right. I had a resting tachycardia, so that's a fast heart rate of it must have been about 120 at the time. So I wasn't doing anything, but that was just what my heart rate was. So then
you feel it. You like it was speeding.
Yeah.
That must have been scary. That must have been scary, or maybe not to you.
Yeah, I think, but most certainly to begin with, I was just disconnected from it. This denial, dissociation from it. For quite a long time. And then it was only by I actually saw a sports and exercise physiologist who actually said, record your heart rate. And actually for me at that time was helpful because it put it on paper. And to have somebody then say to me, yeah, there's something not right here. Your heart rate isn't responding appropriately to the level of activity you're doing. So that was when I became more aware of, okay, something's not right here. And yes, most certainly it's somewhere in the process, fear kicks in because you start to think, there's something wrong with my heart. What's wrong with my heart?
Yeah, when that doctor labeled you, how did you feel about that? Did you?
So, I saw a number of different people in this process. Exercise doctor who was actually very useful. He was willing to he was very much right. It's either respiratory or it's cardiac. Let's rule out the respiratory, or then let's go down the cardiac route. So that's how I ended up back in the cardiology. Department. And then eventually I saw a cardiologist who said, this is an autonomic dysfunction. So
autonomic dysfunction. So it wasn't like, oh, you've had a problem as a child, or it's like, do you feel that your body? Anyway, so continue. I'll hold my question. Continue. So go ahead.
Yeah. So that's what at that point I was left with, which in itself was helpful in that, okay, I understand the autonomic nervous system a little bit, and I knew that there was nothing structurally wrong with me. So to have that understanding was a huge step.
Yeah.
And sort of autonomic dysfunction, they sort of labeled me as what was called inappropriate sinus tachycardia. I mean, now my understanding is all under the same umbrella of an autonomic dysfunction.
Did you ask him, how did this happen?
To be honest, no. I just kind of accepted that's what he said, and then I got back on the computer to try and find out, right, inappropriate sinus tachycardia, what's that?
Right.
And yeah, so that kind of, I bumbled along in the cardiology system for quite a long time, a few years, and then eventually somebody decided that I have something called Postural Tachycardia Syndrome, which is still under the umbrella of an autonomic dysfunction.
Right.
So it didn't change anything, but it just gave it a different label than IST. Which
so I will stop you for a minute, because it's fascinating how when you wrote in your story on the SERPA website about how as a child you could look back and see how many things led to this vulnerability that you had in your body, and that so I find that fascinating that you talked, if you can chat a little bit about maybe your past.
Yeah.
It might help some of the listeners, especially this beautiful part of your story, that the beautiful part of your story. Wait a second, hold on a minute. There you go. Okay. About that you were diagnosed with dyslexia, and the teachers were mean to you, and the students were mean to you. And it's like almost there was the ball and chain already. And then you went ahead and became a nurse. And then like it showed how you kept pushing through and pushing and pushing, and like just like persevering through walls, or there weren't bridges, there were mostly walls that you kept climbing. You really had dealt with adversity, being dyslexic or failing a test, or you didn't know back then, oh, failing helps me succeed. You were just like, probably, I'll stuff that. Can you talk a little bit about your past now that you're aware of how it connects to?
Yeah. And for a number of years, I mean, the medical world don't talk about this, but something in me was like, I knew I was very, very anxious as a child. And I look back and I know that. Now, nobody ever told me that as a child, but understanding what I do now, I was. And I was thinking, that must have had an impact on my developing nervous system. So that was the level of knowledge I had quite early on, when I was starting to make the connection with this work. And so when I look, I mean, I've had further insight since I wrote my story on SERPA website. I had childhood eczema, and I found some baby notes. So I had eczema about 9 months old. And eczema is another TMS symptom.
An autoimmune body attacking itself, and the skin is like the first defense.
Yeah.
Against. Wow.
Yeah. So something has sensitized my nervous system from a really young age, so that's kind of my starting point in life. And I don't know what my birth was like. I never had the opportunity to ask my mother that question, but if she was alive today, that's what I would love to ask her, that question. Yeah. What was it like? Was it traumatic? Was it traumatic for you? What was the environment like? And the impact of birth trauma. So that's question I have, which I don't know, but something has sensitized my nervous system at a really young age.
Wow.
And then just the level of anxiety I had, even so separating from my mother, there was I look back and think I really did not like being separated from my mother. So going to sort of preschool and primary school, that separation was really difficult for me.
Wow.
And then being in the school environment and just not feeling like I fitted in.
Yeah.
Which now I understand is the dyslexic side of things,
Yeah.
which at the time I couldn't make any sense of it. It's like everybody else seems to be able to understand the alphabet, and I just didn't mean anything to me.
Must have felt so terrible. It must have felt, talk about learning to stuff things and be in survival mode. Really?
So home was a safe place. I look back now and think, yeah, home was safe, school wasn't safe.
Wow. You had to go there every day.
Yeah.
So important for us to understand, again, that, we've all had trauma, big T's, little T's, but that, we can incorporate and integrate those traumas and learn from it and grow from it and not blame anyone. I mean, how do you juggle that? And when you look back and you see now that you became a sports person, you were like extreme sports, you were like an athlete, you were like, I'm going to show them that I can be, like, somehow that was sort of what happens in our ego. Like, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be better physically because I couldn't do it intellectually.
I mean, whether that was happening on a subconscious level, I don't know. I think some of my outdoor activities are a self-soothing mechanism.
Yeah,
some of them are, and it's still, if my self-soothing would be to go outside in nature, go for a walk. So I think that's part of it. But there is this drivenness to do something, to be active.
Yeah. So now talking about that, Lorna, so how could you be, now here you are, you have this label, this condition. I mean, obviously you took medication to balance out your heart, but you tried to understand this. And then you talk about in your story how you went back to activity, but this is important for the listeners because activity is very important. And some people are dealing with chronic pain and, neuroplastic pain. And once they exercise, they start feeling symptoms, which we have to breathe through it, walk through it, be compassionate through it, and keep exercising because the brain needs to hear. So how did you have this relationship with your brain, your heart? How did that work in your journey?
Yeah. And I think this is what kind of has got me to where I am now. We use the term somatic tracking, which I didn't understand at the time. But when I fully grasped the fact that there was nothing structurally wrong with my heart, it was the driver, the autonomic nervous system, which was driving the symptoms, then I would do these activities. And yes, my heart rate did respond inappropriately, but there was no fear there.
Yeah.
So I kind of took the symptoms with me into my life, my activities.
Okay, say that again. You took the symptoms with you. So you looked at the evidence. I'm safe.
Yeah.
There is a physiological change, but it cannot hurt me. I'm not in danger.
Yeah.
So you took the symptoms with you, and go ahead, because this is important, because people they stop.
Yeah.
And they get into the fear, pain cycle. And this is this most difficult place. Because the symptoms are your test, it's like the place where you can practice. It's like it can become your superpower. And I say this, like it can become your superpower, the symptoms. You're not going to learn it on a little yoga mat. You're going to learn it in your most discomfort. How do you, Lorna, help me here. How do we help people in their most discomfort, full of fear?
But I would say I didn't go from nothing or very low level activity to where I am today, which is quite a high level of activity. This was a gradual slow process. So this is part of the work. It's going there gently, being kind to yourself and your nervous system, going there, coming back, pulling back, going there, coming back. So it was, yeah, I would go for a walk, I would ride my bike, but it was like, yeah, my heart rate is a little faster. And I did have symptoms. I now tend to use the word sensations because it's not, it kind of demedicalizes it to a certain extent. So the sensations were there, but they came with me in the activities I was doing. And very, very gradually and slowly, I would just kind of challenge that a little bit. And I do say very slowly. So I was kind to my body as well. I wasn't pushing through. And it was a real time of learning. So instead of, my normal approach would be, I'm going to walk up this particular summit hill. But I'd approach it with, okay, I don't feel like doing this. My body is quite fatigued, but let's give it a go. But let's have option A, B, C, and D. And we'll see how we get on. But giving myself permission to not achieve the whole goal and just celebrate the little victories that I did. So if I just did part of the walk, celebrate that, and that's okay. So being able to go there, but also turn around, come back.
Yeah. So what I'm going to interrupt you because this is I'm thinking of a few of my clients that I'm really, I have enormous compassion and empathy for, but they're stuck in the fear pain cycle. And I want to go back to that because, so what do you recommend that someone, because you didn't have the fear, you had the kind of concern, you were curious, you had the fatigue, and maybe you were scared. I mean, you were already over, like, okay, I'm going to get over this. You were trusting your body. And this is where people, they can't trust their body because the fear is so great.
Yeah.
So how would you talk someone through that, the big fear factor, which is driving the sensations to be greater?
Yeah.
How would you recommend that? What would you suggest?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just thinking what I would suggest to my clients. I think the more they understand, depending on what the symptom is, the more they understand what's driving it, what's behind that sensation, the more it takes away the fear. So I use a modality called embodied processing, and it's incredible in terms of it taps into some of these sensations and helps tap into what is the message that's being held behind this sensation, and what does this sensation represent. And when you go there, it can start to unravel and take away some of the fear. So often in a session, people might the sensation that they are experiencing from day to day turns up, and when they realize it's associated with a certain trigger or something that happens, then that helps dissolve the fear. So that's just one way that we might tackle it. Again, it's using self-soothing strategies, helping somebody feel safe in their body, their environment. The more safety one feels, the less driver of the fear there is with these sensations.
Right. And also, you didn't experience the heart rate issue at rest. You experienced it when you were active.
So I'd say there was a time in this journey where my heart rate was active at rest. So just rolling over in bed. It was like somebody would put their, putting a foot on the accelerator, and my heart, I could just feel my rate just accelerate.
So interesting. Wow. That must have been scary, but you began to trust it, I guess.
Yeah. And the more I kind of went with it, the easier it became to be with.
And so you had a relationship. You had a relationship with these sensations.
Yeah.
Which
and the other side of it is I ultimately changed my lifestyle. So the external stresses that are there, the working in the emergency department, I removed myself from that. I stopped doing shift work. I started working part-time. instead of full time, which gave more time for self-care. So those steps were also very significant in this journey.
Important.
And the more I looked at that side of things, the more balanced my nervous system became.
Very important. So you actually regulated your nervous system, which is like another way that I think, like I'm certified in PRT and I've been really involved with the work, and this new movie came out, and I'm fascinated by the pain reprocessing therapy. I'm just amazed at what the brain can do. And so we're talking about brain regulation. So what you were doing was another form of brain regulation.
Yeah.
I just want to answer Susie's question. Hi, Susie. It's always good to see you here, my dearest. She wants to know if you did this alone or did you have support, Lorna?
So I did it alone. Somehow I seem to work this out. I wish I knew what I do now at the time. I wish somebody told me. It would have taken a whole lot less years than what it actually did.
So you're not bullying yourself about that, are you?
No, it's fine. But it does feel about, why did nobody tell me?
Right. This is not because, again, why because you weren't. Lots of people don't get TMS. I think we're special, sensitive, strong individuals, and it's not something we're taught because we go to the doctor. Pain means something is wrong, and the pain goes away, especially if it's acute. But neuroplastic pain and a lot of autoimmune symptoms are counterintuitive. I happen to think all autoimmune symptoms are potentially can go away, and I've seen them in my career. I've seen every autoimmune system shift and change, and people go from MS to healthy and cancer to healthy. So I'm one of these flying these flag of like that everything is neuroplastic, but it's not about the topic tonight. What I want to say to you is that I lost my train of thought. But anyway, what was I talking about? But continue because you're continue, and I'll catch my train of thought.
So just while we're on the topic of autoimmune symptoms,
please, yes.
POTS, from a medical point of view, it doesn't quite sit under the autoimmune conditions. There is some thought and maybe some evidence that it is autoimmune, but this hasn't been confirmed by medical literature. So there's no clear research to say POTS is an autoimmune condition. So I would never refer to it as an autoimmune condition.
What would you call it?
It's an autonomic nervous system dysfunction would be. So dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system and immune system.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's a neurological dysfunction. It's like it's okay.
Yeah.
So
medically, they wouldn't even say it's a neurological condition. It doesn't I've heard.
All we know is you had it one day and you didn't have it one day, and the next day you have it.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, something changed overnight.
I call that. Yeah, and it changed from psychological things, not because something happened to your heart, God forbid. Like something. That's kind of how, But anyway, so good to say that, and I'm okay with forget the labels. Just you were able, and I'm okay to say on the record you're on medication. I'm not against medication because it helped you understand and do the work, and you had other work to do. You had other work to do besides. It wasn't like the medication, I'm fine. You had to work with your nervous system and work with your thought process and create this language of safety threat.
Totally.
Which I know Susie and I have learned from Dr. David Hanscom. But Jennifer's asking a question, which I'm really happy because I wanted you to talk about this. I'm sorry I keep interrupting. I just get very excited about this stuff. But Jennifer's question is, has breathing been important in your recovery, which I know has. So thank you for mentioning that.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I would say I didn't understand about the breathing aspect until I'd refer to myself as pretty much recovered now. So only when I'm in this recovered state have I realized the importance of breathing. So breathing hasn't been something that I have particularly worked on for myself. But with POTS, there are some studies out there that a high proportion of people with POTS have a dysfunctional breathing pattern. And
very interesting.
yeah. So and this was a study that came out a few years ago, so it's relatively recent. It's something like 80-90% of people, which is a significant number of people, which from a medical point of view got me thinking, well, what is this breathing pattern disorder they keep on talking about? And what is the relevance with POTS? So that's why I went on this whole journey to learn more about, well, what does this mean? I've not heard of this with my medical hat on. So that's why I became really interested in breathing. And the more I looked into breathing, and I'm still looking into it, and the importance of breathing, not only does it our chemistry, the chemistry of the body shifts if we're not breathing optimally, but also the power of breathing in terms of the nervous system, and how we can use breathing as a tool to calm the nervous system.
I just have to say this on the record because it's just so profound, and I did not learn this in chiropractic school. I did not learn it like for a long time until recently, how important the exhale is, and that it's like a pharmacy. It brings out this whole medicine cabinet of chemicals when we exhale deeply, activating the vagus nerve and creating cannabis and endorphins and cocaine and opioids just by the breath.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blown away by that. So the person who's in fear, if they could breathe and almost like breathe the fear, like I'm feeling like, because it can calm the fear, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I would say about breathing is, yes, a prolonged exhalation will help access the parasympathetic nervous system. But what they're realizing now is that any slow breathing practice where you can reduce the respiratory rate will help calm the nervous system as well.
Say that again, please. Say that again.
So any slow breathing practice. So spending time just reducing your respiratory rate. So the optimal is something like 5.5 breaths a minute.
Even just slowly breathing. Does it matter if it's deep? Does it matter if it's through your nose or your mouth? Just a slow breathing. Anything specific?
Yeah. So optimally, breathing should be in and out through the nose all the time.
Through the nose.
In and out through the nose all the time, including with exercise. That is the optimal. And there's a whole science behind that. Breathing, we tend not to use the word deep because deep means different things to different people. And I ask people this question. Often you say, take a deep breath, and they just go, take a big breath. So actually we want our breathing to be lighter, softer, less quiet. So that's an optimal breathing, in and out through the nose, slow, relaxed, less. So people with POTS tend to breathe too much, too fast, take big breaths too fast, using their upper chest. So a lot of upper chest breathing rather than belly breathing. And that's a sympathetic response. It's a sympathetic breathing.
It's like as opposed to the belly breathing is more of and I think you're getting something. It's the diaphragmic, which is activating the vagus nerve. Is that right?
Exactly. So belly breathing will help with all of that. And also it's a more parasympathetic breathing state. So again, it's a tool that can be used to help somebody come out of the sympathetic fight-flight state into a parasympathetic state.
Wow. Wow. And how would somebody, like, I'm not that experienced in it, but I use it with exercise and I talk about mindfulness, but how would someone learn? Because this is so important for everyone, especially under fear mode, in survival mode. How would someone learn? I mean, there's tons of things on the YouTube. What do you suggest would be the way that someone could learn to regulate breathing? Because it's so important, Lorna. It's so important. It really is the key.
Yeah, there's that's an interesting question. There's a lot of stuff out there that is unhelpful and inconsistent. So people get mixed messages. So to work with somebody, I mean, I've got lots of resources that I don't think I could share them all just now, but to work with somebody who really understands the whole breathing aspect is optimal. So I trained with Buteyko International. They're great. There's the Bradcliffe method, they're absolutely sound. So working with somebody who's trained with a reputable science-based training. The other thing I will say about breathing, the more I do this work, sort of somatic work, breathing can also be really triggering for people. So
oh my gosh, it's so true that you said that, Lorna. It can bring up another kind of anxiety.
Exactly.
So what do you suggest?
So for some people to do any sort of breathing practice, it might not be safe for your body at this time. Right. I think as Irene Lyons said, for some people this is advanced. You need to start with the basics. And as you work through the basics, then you can start bringing in some breathing practice. And so with my clients, I always, I will suggest, try, see how you get on. But I ask them, how does this feel in your body when you do this practice? Does it make you feel stressed? And they'll soon tell you if they feel, actually, I find this really hard. Then it might be like, okay, maybe this is not helpful for you at this time. Maybe it's something to come back to at a later date.
Right. Because I imagine, would you say that 90% of the time, if people are in fear, they're not breathing? They're holding their breath.
There's a lot of breath holding. And I do think so the sort of sympathetic type breathing is faster through the mouth, lots of upper chest movement. But then if you go into more of a freeze state, a polyvagal freeze state, what's going to happen? You're going to hold your breath. You're not going to move. You're just going to pretend that if I stay really still, nobody will notice. So I'm still learning and exploring about this, but I do think that the breath holding thing, like I had a client approach me recently who said, I notice I am breath holding a lot. So straight away I asked the question, well, what is going on from a nervous system perspective? Why this breathing response? What is happening? And actually, when I explore with clients through the somatic work I do, I've had clients who've had near suffocation type experiences. Somebody who went into an environment where there's a horrid smell, so they held their breath because of that environment that they were in. And often these breathing patterns, there might be an origin of that breathing pattern. And so I always ask, why the breathing pattern disorder? Why is the breathing dysfunctional? What's going on from a nervous system perspective?
Very good point. So I want to talk about every little thing in your story. You gravitated towards Pilates. Can I ask why Pilates and not yoga or Qigong or,
basically a physio, because at the time I did have various musculoskeletal pain. So I went to see a physio, and the physio said, you should go and do Pilates. So
why were you having pain?
It's a very good question. Again, I think it's this overactive nervous system. A lot of the pain that I had at the time, it's gone somewhere on the journey.
So I think for most people, I mean, on the record, the chronic pain is in the brain, and it is an overactive central sensitization, the brain repeating it, the dial turned up to 10, and and the predictive coding of I'm going to have pain when I walk, a certain amount of steps, or so. I like how you're like it's in the brain, but I love even clarifying the brain is irregulated. so people can know, okay, so I got to regulate my brain. Okay, but then I have my emotions are playing a part. My unconscious mind is sort of needing some attention. So how do you, you were able to somehow calm your unconscious mind that affected your heart? Like, talk a little bit more about how, because you talk about brain regulation in your website, and it's really, really amazing how you're putting it all together with physical movement, breathing. Are you journaling? Are you anything else that you're doing besides the brain regulation, the physical Pilates,
Yeah. So no, I don't journal, and I've never journaled, to be honest.
it's okay. You don't, it's not, that's not for everybody, but
No, it's not for everyone. It's a brilliant tool, and it's something I encourage all my clients to have a go at, because those who get into it, it's just so beneficial. But it's also acknowledging it's not going to be for everybody, and that's okay.
yeah, it's true. It's so true. This is why it's a personal journey.
Yeah, totally. So I'm just thinking, what else did I do? So I think a lot of it was capturing thoughts. So not allowing
Capturing, this is good. Capturing thoughts.
Not allowing myself to spiral into a negativity. So there's an element of positive thinking with it, but I will say the risk of just positive thinking is actually we need to feel the other emotions that are available to us as well, and feel the whole range of emotions. So that's what I would encourage my.
And how does one see, like, so this is where I'm in touch with my feelings, but I may not be able to feel them. And this is where people get stuck.
Yeah.
Because they know that they have the fear. And then one of my clients will be, well, you're talking very abstract. What do you mean I have to feel? And I'm like, you're right, it is abstract. It is abstract. So how would you suggest, how does one feel their feelings?
So I ask somebody, I try and find something that they can connect with. So fear is a good one. So I say to somebody, okay, you know you're afraid. How do you know you're afraid? And quite often they can acknowledge, I feel my heart, my breathing might start to go faster. I need the toilet. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's where you're feeling your fear. And I get people to think of some other emotions. So, okay, love, where do you feel love? And again, they might say, oh, it's a warm feeling in my chest. Everybody's expression of that emotion, of an emotion, is very individual.
Okay.
So that's where I start.
Okay, and then what? Because then what do I do with it? Okay, so now I have the intellectual, experience of it's in my body. Now what?
And then it's allowing yourself to sit with that.
Aha.
And
Now
be
we're talking
with
about patience
and
love of self and trust and belief and like staying in the process. And then what we learned a couple of weeks ago from Drew Coverdale, which it's a little bit like bittersweet, because he talks about these extinction bursts. And so I get excited because I have some relief, and then my brain goes on high wire and I'm having more symptoms again. It's not like you'll never win. It's like you just need to understand yourself and this relationship you have with your nervous system, and how it's going to be in a habit, and how you can regulate it yourself. Go ahead. So back to the feeling. So be with it. Talk more about that. Be with the feeling.
So emotions, they tend to rise up. It's like riding a wave. They rise up and then they subside. So it's allowing that rising up to happen. So quite often so an emotion might rise up, and there might be a sensation in their body associated to that. They don't like it, so it's shut down. Or something like anger, or I'm not allowed to feel angry. That's something that they might be brought up with, or their belief. But it's just allowing that wave to rise, feel that emotion. It's only there for a time, it will settle. So a lot of allowing.
And allowing is, because I'm going to get to this question. I learned when I saw the movie Love Heals and spoke with Dr. David Hanscom that, mindfulness is awareness, and that awareness is a kind of a love.
Mm.
And what you just said is it's awareness is kind of an acceptance, kind of like not fighting reality. And I do know that so much we need to love ourselves and trust and love. I know no one wants to love their pain or love their sensations, but I think it's like a freeway to healing. I don't think. I know if someone can be sincerely um, accepting their body and what's going on, I feel like doors open. I've seen it happen when people accept. Yeah, I've met people when they love their cancer went away. I can't hide from that. Like, I can't run from that experience I keep having with people. When I meet people or when I interview, and it's like, how can I love my fibromyalgia? I mean, how can I? And so you have to, then what Dr. Hansen says, well, then you have to play. Okay, this woman who had cancer, she was going to go in for chemo. And so she said, I'm going to call it chemo ecstasy. I'm going to come out of there and put this great wig on, And so she played, and it was profound. So it is play. It is. So we're getting back to the awareness, the playfulness, the self-regulation, the knowing yourself. Talk more about that, Lorna, on that topic of how would one love themselves, the sensations and symptoms, and we talk a little bit more about that.
So I suppose learning to love yourself, it's, again, you have to do, if you don't love yourself, it's, well, why do you not love yourself? And it's usually there's some root in childhood where that comes from. And when you can get to the root and allow this part of you that doesn't feel loved to integrate back into your system, then you have the capacity to love yourself. So sometimes you kind of need to go to what's the root of it. And then there's a practical, what does that look like? And that's going to be very individual. So I don't think I could say it looks like this. But for me, it's time, giving myself time, and knowing my needs of my body. So I know I need a regular sleep pattern, and it's respecting that.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries.
Good.
Work-life balance.
And would you say also, Lorna, like if we have to learn, we have to unlearn pain, like we learn pain, we learned to be unloved, we learn to feel unloved. So we need to learn to feel love. We need to learn to feel. We need to develop a new, a pathway of loving. And people love themselves a lot on the outside. Then there's this war inside. So that's the place of what I'm uncomfortable going in there. It's much easier to go to the gym and take care of myself. And so it's complicated with some people, but I don't lose hope for anyone. I think everybody is capable. I mean, can you share maybe a case of yours where there were some difficult symptoms and you were able to help someone breathe? Can you share something, maybe a testimony, or maybe a difficult client?
Oh, I'm just thinking of somebody. Not off the top of my head. I would have needed to have thought about that a little bit.
That's okay.
Beforehand.
Talk more about how you might have, you understood that you were dyslexic. You understood that, something was going to happen when you in your story, you talk about your childhood and all the things that happened and the teachers and the students and that you being laughed at. It's really, you really, really were shot down a lot. It's like something was going to happen with that kind of trauma. You were able to, what I call, channel it to serve you after you fell on your face and got this condition. But I think what was good was that you kept working. You went part-time, but you kept figuring out different things. Like you had this sort of hope. I got to get to the solution. I'm worth it. You valued yourself. You cared enough about yourself. And I think the symptoms could have gotten worse, especially with the physical pain. But I see that you were able to lift yourself up, even kind of knowing that you're going to climb another wall.
I think it was hope, keeping hope. I never lost hope. And the fear of symptoms that often really holds people back. I never really had that fear.
Yeah.
So I think that combination is what has moved me onward and forward.
Yeah.
And I'd honestly say that I've recovered. I do still take medication, but I'm sort of over the last few years since I've been doing this work with other people, I've been weaning myself off my medication. So it's been a bit of a process because the medication was life-changing. So you can't just
no, of course. So what if somebody has fear and no hope? Then what?
I'd encourage you to listen to the stories, because there's an increasing number of stories, particularly around POTS and any of the TMS stories. And those stories will instill some hope. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And then, again, just like anything else, somebody could look at the stories and be, and get triggered.
Yeah.
Like, that's not me. And then they're back to where, and so sometimes it's really just about, then we have to sort of, I call it tough love, and be like, well, what did these, what would you say? I know what I would say. What would you say to somebody who was just was hopeless, and they're worthy of living and they wanted to live, but they felt so beaten down by this. And I have just enormous empathy for those people. But I feel like you're at the door, this is, let's call this rock bottom, and now you're going to go up. Like, I just keep finding ways to be the cheerleader. How do you cheerlead?
So I'm just thinking of an answer.
Take a moment.
Yeah. So I think everybody, that there is something to hold on to. So however small that thing is, hold on to what there is hope for, and then build on that. So the big hope might be that you're symptom free, and maybe you've been battling this journey for a long time and it feels like you're not getting there, but keep taking the steps forward, even if they're little steps, and you'll get there.
Yeah.
But sometimes it is a journey. We're all on this journey, and there's not a simple answer. You might need to, as somebody I interviewed said, she went down a rabbit hole and then would come out of it again and realize that's not right. Went down another rabbit hole. You might go down a few rabbit holes to find the right path for you, and that's going to be very individual. And it's usually not one thing, one therapist, one modality. It's usually a combination that each have a part to play in this process.
Yeah, I tell everyone who comes they've been to many therapists. I'm like, they're all part of your journey. They're not for naught. They're all part of what got you here. And yeah, I'd love to be the last one, but if we can, because we feel guilty, or we feel so beaten down, and it's like, how could they trust one more therapist? But that just, because I like to say, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And then I have this infographic that says, when the student is really ready, they don't need a teacher. And it's what do you think?
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
And often healing comes from within. We just have to tap into our own healing resources, and they're there. Yeah. And I feel like my role is to walk with somebody on that journey and give a few pointers, but actually it comes from within the client.
Beautiful.
They know what they need. If they tap into their heart, it's there.
Yeah, and I think your relationship with your client is important because they feel safe and they
Yeah,
can take that relationship into their own life
yeah,
and know that maybe they didn't have people in their life
yeah,
that you wrote that in one of your suggestions, be around positive people, be around people who
yeah,
you feel safe with.
yeah,
So can you leave our listeners with maybe one or two or three really important um, insights for change and for hope?
yeah. So there's hope for everyone. It's possible to recover. You need to find your own healing journey. So go with it. Um, Try something. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. There'll be something else. Um, Find somebody to work with, support you on this journey. As Susie says, she was surprised I did it by myself. There wasn't such a thing as SERPA and all this work when I went on this journey. So having somebody who can hold your hand in this process, it does make a huge difference
Yeah.
to do so.
And I will ask you to mention, because you do mention on your story not to be involved in the Facebook pages, but yet there is support. So again, know yourself, know your limit, understand when you're being triggered.
Yeah, a lot of my clients do. They come to me and say, "Do you know, I've come off these groups because they are dragging me down. Um, I'm thinking about who am I following, who am I listening to." So surround yourself with like-minded people who you feel safe with and
Yeah.
who you can learn from.
Yeah.
And yeah, Facebook groups, they have their place, but they can kind of
Yeah.
they can send a certain identity that reinforce the sick role, as I call
Yeah.
it, rather than seeing yourself as I can be well. I'm on this healing journey.
Good point. And mention one last thing maybe about the breathing, how essential. I just love your focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing is really important. Talk a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about that before we say goodnight.
Yeah. I think the key summaries with breathing is learn to breathe in and out through your nose, learn to belly breathe, and learn to breathe a little lighter, a little less, but also be aware that breathing can be triggering and work with somebody if you want to learn more about breathing well.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm so happy to meet you. I'm really, and we'll bring you back when Rose comes back, and we'll have another show, and we'll talk more about it. Um,
There's plenty more I could talk about.
yeah, it's just, and and you're on your journey. I mean, I
Mm,
don't even like the word cure. I think it's a journey, and
no.
I think what you did was you kept in your life. Like there are some people who do come out of life because they can't be in the world, but I think it's important to not tell the brain, show the brain that you to somehow be as functional as possible
Mm,
and be involved in possible part-time work, volunteer work. I mean, that's what I wanted to talk about. You got involved in an organization.
oh yes.
Talk about that. This is very important. It's
Yeah.
like you gave to, and Sarno talks about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gave to others
Yeah.
in order to help.
Yeah.
Mention that
So
real quick.
so because there was nothing out there in the UK, well, there's very little in the world about POTS. I started a charity called POTS UK, which is a information providing charity
Wow.
in the UK. I've now stepped back from the charity, so I'm not involved, so I can focus more on the mind body approach. But at the time, that's what I started.
Amazing.
So I
Amazing.
channeled my
No,
energies into something.
it's so important. It's so important, even if it's, a kindergarten in your house and just getting involved. I mean, just about giving to others is giving to
Mm,
yourself and all that and the distraction and the energy, I am really, really happy. And so I'm going to put your story up again on the
okay.
website.
Mm-hmm.
You're available. You're on Facebook, Laura. Lorna, you're an inspiration to me, and I'm really happy that Georgie gave me your name.
Thank you. Nice.
There's there's some amazing healing going on in the UK. People are falling and getting up all over the world. So thank you so much. I know we had a problem last week and we had to reschedule, but we did it because I'm relentless. I'm not going to let a good story go. And thank you for your patience with me. And there was a wonderful some people listening. Anyone has any last questions for Lorna? But otherwise, you're available. You're around.
You can, if you've got questions, find my website and email me. I'm very happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
And thank God for Facebook that we can connect like this. It's very bittersweet, my relationship with Facebook and the internet. I really do love it. I'm very happy about it, but we have to be careful. Balance. We're talking about balance, breathing slowly. So thank you once again. I'm sending blessings to you and for continued healing. And I never like to say goodbye, just like we'll see each other again.
I'm sure you will.
Okay, thank you so much. Good night, everybody. God bless. Give me 1 second. Let me